Signature-based endpoint protection requires constant updates. Critical networks that we are protecting can span across a vast area, and it's challenging to keep cyber protection up to date. As a result, there are gaps in protection, as some devices are not updated for whatever reasons. There are also cases where updating endpoints may end up choking the networks. Critical networks are typically isolated or air-gapped. Skilled adversaries can even use updates as an entry point into such isolated networks. Gaps in protection and host sensor design issues allow malware to run and evade such endpoint detection response products without the need to escalate privilege. Such evasion results in blind spots that deny defenders from early threat detection. Even when telemetry collection is not being circumvented, technical complexity and shortage of talents make detection engineering non-trivial. Now that we know the pain points, what are we really up against? We can better understand the magnitude of the problem in a global context from VirusTotal's report. Over the last 16 years, VirusTotal processed 2 million files per day across 232 countries. Between January 2020 to October 2021, it registered more than 80 million potential ransomware-related samples, of which 95% of ransomware files detected were Windows-based executables or dynamic link libraries. So how did ransomware get into networks? In terms of distribution, attackers don't appear to need exploits other than for privilege escalation and for malware spreading within the internal networks. For critical networks, intrusion will most likely start off as standard user privilege. Attackers have to stay in the network for a while to figure out which exploit to use to escalate privilege. Since most initial intrusions start off as standard user accounts, that means malicious executable files are owned by the victim. We devised a reliable application control approach that will address the first pain point, protecting endpoints without the need for updates. Regardless of any insider who directly executes a malware, or a careless user who clicks OK to a malicious macro, our application control will block and protect the endpoint from such code execution. But unlike typical application control, we designed it to protect without complex configuration. There is no administrative hassle to maintain a whitelist. As for pain point 2, our approach does not depend on userland hooking. That means running a custom malware that doesn't match any antivirus signatures. Operating with standard users' privilege cannot evade our protection. Since we denied malicious executable files owned by standard users, attackers have to work around this protection to use other offensive code execution techniques. So what are the other methods? There are 3 broad types of malicious code execution. Type 1 directly executes compiled code files. This is the most common type of malware, which forms 95% of the ransomware as reported by VirusTotal. Type 2 indirectly loads malicious codes with application or system tools, also known as living off the land. The codes can be in non-executable formats, like a script or macro. The first 2 types rely on system or application features, but the last type can remotely inject malicious codes into memory without having to write to disk, by exploiting bugs or design flaws to achieve remote code execution. To accurately detect type 2 and 3 code execution with few false positives, we took advantage of the fact that purpose-built endpoints within industrial networks have fewer types of processes running when compared to an enterprise IT network. By working with our research partners, we devised an efficient method of grouping similar processes together, without complex algorithm training or hard-coding rules to spot outliers accurately. To deal with process spoofing, we came up with a real-time approach to derive full lineage of any process. And by engineering additional process attributes, we help analysts quickly infer which system tools are abused by users or launched by exploits, all from an easy-to-follow user interface that has built-in checklists to refer to. Analysts can then quickly respond to detected anomaly. Our divide-and-conquer approach to deal with code execution provides systematic protection against endpoint attacks that are mostly achieved with running malicious codes. We are in the process of porting our efficient back-end detection logic to provide localized endpoint protection against type 2 and 3 code execution. Upon detection of anomaly, the offending process will be suspended for further review and response. By suspending the process, any false alerts can be resumed without disruption to the systems. Beyond the frivolous issue of avoiding confusion with Komodo's offering, we believe cybersecurity should be a public good. It means making it more accessible and lowering the cost effort of adoption. This should be the case because public monies fund some of the research works. Even our Year 1 university intern could clock in depth and practical experience using our tool, which he can install on his own machine for further exploration at his own pace. In a matter of 2 months, he added enhancements to our open-sourced backend and performed offensive test cases to spot his own attacks as part of his internship. Small-medium enterprises form an important and sizable portion of our economy and services. There has been a 4-fold rise in ransomware incidents reported between 2018 and 2020. It is likely that there were more cases that were not reported. Free EDR can be a part of SME's cyber resilience, protecting against ransomware and detecting anomalous activities within their networks. We understand the predicaments faced by many organizations. At one end, there's not enough budget, shortage of talents, and breaches can lead to strict regulatory consequences. The other end, there are so many free offensive tools, tutorials, and research knowledge for threat actors to use. By sharing free endpoint defense and response, we can create a positive impact to help organizations directly with their predicaments through the development of more support materials for deployment and training. Thank you for taking interest. We hope you can be a part of this initiative.